Good.
Building up the office. I fixed my ring light. Could have been bad.
Okay, good.
It went dark in an interview earlier. I was like, oops.
Okay. I was a couple minutes late. So what do you say? What do you say we get started? We got 53 people here so far.
Yeah,
We got a bunch of
more
people
coming.
pouring in. This is awesome. Great. Welcome back, everyone. We are broadcasting live from Boston. I note that because we might be broadcasting live from other places in the future. So tonight from Boston, I am so pumped to be back. We haven't taken a week off in this show in so long, and it was like I'm not sure, whatever, 14 days, 2 weeks since the last time we did this. It's great to have everyone back. I hope that everyone had a great, safe holiday. I personally had a great break. I spent some time in the mountains of New Hampshire with friends doing some snowboarding. My sister had been visiting from Spain. I hadn't seen her in a long time because of the obvious reasons in the lockdown. She hasn't been back to the U.S. in some time, so it was really great to see her. And then January 1st rolls around, and I'm feeling pretty antsy to get back into it. And so I spent the last couple of days of break really thinking about strategy and doing some big picture thinking. So hope you all had an awesome break. Couple of quick announcements. On Thursday, so 2 days from now, Thursday, January 6th, we'll be having a special event with the only Gaetano DiNardi, covering literally the title, The State of Demand Gen 2022. We've done this this will be the third year in a row where we recap some of the things that happened in 2021. We also look at our 2021 predictions and see how right or wrong we both were. And then we make some predictions of things that are going to happen in 2022. So that's been a really cool episode that we've done 3 years in a row. So if you want to be there live, that is at 12 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, January 6th. It's a UK EMEA friendly time as well. And then before we get into it, I just wanted to did some thinking. I just wanted to let you know how grateful that I am for all of the listeners to the podcast, all the people that show up to the live events. And also lately I've been getting an enormous amount of DMs on LinkedIn from people that have been able to take this information and either get a significant promotion in their current job from just, taking part in demand to actually going and leading a demand team of like 7 or 10 people to people that have been able to change jobs, people that are starting their companies. And so it's just great to see people that are a part of the community taking the information, going out and getting stuff done, and having success with it. So with all of that said, let's get into the agenda. I went in a little bit of a different direction tonight for Demand Gen Live, and so we're just going with one topic. It might blend more into a keynote type of format. We'll see where it goes. Basically what I was thinking, I know that we have the thing with Gaetano coming in for 2022, but what I wanted for this one to look at is something a little bit different, which is like, what are these like, I call them tenets, but what are these like pillars that are like so undeniably true that marketers need to adjust to them? And as I look, so we're going to get into a lot of detail on things. People that listen to this podcast every week may not hear a ton of things that are new, but might hear things that are new in a different context. So stay tuned for that. But just generally, when I look around in the market, I spend a time with a lot of companies, people not respecting these things that are undeniably true. And so let's get into it and see where it goes. Tenet number 1, marketing is not sales. It sounds simple, but when you actually look at the behaviors and the metrics that marketing teams use, that they are most often doing digital sales in what most people would just consider marketing channels. So just because they're using HubSpot to send emails, or just because they're using LinkedIn ads, they call it marketing. But if you look at the behavior, it's really just digital sales to convert people to do sales. And so that's the number one piece that to start this off of what people need to recognize. And this is not, sometimes it's the fault of individual marketers, but generally this is the fault of leadership, because the metrics that get set at the companies force marketers to only do this stuff. And so the only way to solve this, we're helping companies do it. I'm spending a lot of time on the podcast. I know companies are adjusting to this because marketing can literally do nothing else if you don't change the metrics away from what they are right now, which is some form of direct response leads that require attribution. So tenet number 1, marketing is not sales. We need to adjust the mindset of what we're doing in marketing, which is we're not the lead gen component of it is the output of good marketing, not the input of what we're doing. And so when you think about it, what I am trying to accomplish in marketing is to educate the buyer so that they are ready to buy, not so that they fill out the form. It's a little bit of a different nuance. Could you get the AC? It's like incredibly hot in here. Cool. Tenet number 2. We need to look at marketing in a long-term window. Some people might have seen my LinkedIn post that came out. It got about 2,500 likes and comments on it. That was about all of the people that are hitting the panic alarm and firing stuff off because their December pipeline was down by like 30%. When there's 30% less selling days, B2B buyers are checked out. We have this resurgence of a pandemic, some economic uncertainty. It's so fucking obvious why the pipeline's down 30%. And people are like, it's marketing's fault. What's wrong with marketing? We need to change something. Let's go hire another agency. We need a new strategy, whatever. And it's just like, so when you look at marketing in such a micro view, like the ups and downs cause you to change strategies when you shouldn't. And when you look at marketing in a long-term view, and I have an example of this, is that if I worked at a B2B company when I was starting Refine Labs and I executed the strategy that has gotten us this far to a pretty enormous growth over the past two and a half plus years, and I worked in a company after 2 months of running LinkedIn content and having, like, that point, if I was doing it for 2 months, I probably had 20 to 50 likes on a post. Not a ton of not every company's coming to work with us. Not all of them are great fits. Not all of them are Series D companies or whatever enterprise companies people want to work at. And so people would have, a CFO, a CEO would have looked at that and been like, this stuff isn't working because I look at marketing in such a short-term window. So we're going to kill this program and let's go run some lead gen. And in fact, when I worked at a B2B company, that did happen to me. I got fired for doing the exact same thing that I did to build my company for that company because they look at marketing in such a short-term window. Technically, I resigned, but I pretty much got fired. If that happened, then none of the stuff at Refine Labs could have ever happened because they would have killed the program and then they would have said, okay, let's go back and let's run lead gen and we'll run outbound sales, which is the go-to-market strategy that most companies gravitate back towards when they basically regress back to old tactics that appease activity metrics and vanity metrics. And so none of that stuff would have been possible. But then if you actually look at it in a long-term view, we had pretty strong traction on LinkedIn for about 18 months. No, it couldn't have been that long, 2020. So we had pretty strong traction on LinkedIn for about 6 months for me. Keep in mind, at this point, we don't have very many employees, either a handful of employees. And then the pandemic happens. And other companies don't know how to create content. They don't know how to post on LinkedIn. They don't know how to run events. You get what I'm saying. And so while all those other companies are trying to figure out how are we going to respond to this, our events are gone, nobody's answering our cold calls anymore, blah, 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 blah. We're going hard on the content strategy that no one else knew how to figure out. And it actually accelerated through that component. And there's a ton of other changes that are happening in the marketing, removal of cookies, further emergence of dark social, other things like that we are capitalizing on, not trying to figure out. While other companies try to figure out, we capitalize because we've looked at marketing in a long-term view. And so just to recap here, I see companies look at marketing in too short of a window. Even looking at it in a quarter is too short for new programs, which cause them to move away from things that could work before they even have a chance to work. And then all you just get is this ping pong ball bouncing around, looking for shiny objects, trying to do different stuff. Cool. Tenet number 3. Marketers need to create demand, and the best way to create demand is inside of dark social. It's undeniable right now. When we think about it, and I'm going to break it down for people just for a recap, most companies focus on capturing demand, waiting in intent channels where people have that are already solution aware and are looking to buy something. That's where they sit because that's where all the intent is. It's definitely the easiest to measure, and they just grew up in places with Google and things like that, so they're just used to direct response with a lot of intent. And creating demand is actually doing all of the hard work to educate someone so that they actually go and look for something. And so if you're not creating demand and you're sitting down there waiting, what's happening is that something or somebody, maybe one of your competitors, maybe something that you don't see, maybe or just a different company that's helping people sort out their business priorities by educating them. And then instead of them adopting your product, they're adopting a different product for finance because they helped the company understand that there was a better way to invest their resources with a product. And so you need to be the company that's going out there and educating the market on why they need to think about prioritizing what you're doing in their business. What are the risks? What are the opportunities? What are the pain points? These types of things people need to know deeply and then associate them with your company. And so now that we have a good set between capturing demand and creating demand, the tenet is we need to create demand, and the best way to create demand today is in dark social. Because B2B buyers, all of them, let me just pause and tell a story real quick. I was actually looking to buy something. I'm looking for a web app development firm. This was 2-3 days ago. I was looking for this company. And when I decided that I was looking for one, I didn't know anybody in my network that would know what to use. And I didn't know of a single company because none of them had marketed to me at all. And so no web app, there's probably hundreds or thousands of those in the US, web app development firms. None of them created demand for me. And so because none of them created demand, where did I go? I went to Google search and then I looked for something and I found a top 10 list. I ended up submitting a couple forms. Most likely none of them will be good fits, and then we will revert back to looking into dark social. But that's the key here, is that the only reason that I went to search is because I didn't know anybody and no company had created demand. If a company had done that, I would have immediately routed to them and not even considered any other options. So that's the power of doing it. While all the other companies are waiting there in Google search, you want to be the company that says, hey, actually you don't need that search at all. I'm going to teach you all those things over here. And so in dark social and all those places where we need to think about creating demand. Number 4 tenet is called the attribution mirage. I was on a call with a VP of RevOps today, that was looking for straight line linear attribution on every single channel. We want to know exactly that when we put $20,000 in LinkedIn, how much revenue we're going to get out and how many customers we're going to get out. And if you want to go back, it's funny because we're on the call trying to fix their marketing, which is only doing that. And then they still want to keep doing it so that they can measure it. And it's like the only way that you're going to get out of this cycle of just collecting shitty leads that your sales team doesn't like and doesn't close is to think differently about all of marketing. And you have to abandon this obsession with thinking that everything is going to be perfectly tracked and you're going to have something to tell you exactly what to do in a dashboard. Where the way that B2B buyers are buying is changing so fast. None of the software products out there can keep up because it's happening more fast and the software products can't innovate. The symptoms of this problem are actually getting worse and worse. If you look at them, none of this shit's on their roadmap. No attribution software company is trying to solve these things. And so it just gives marketers, I think, worse and worse data over time. And so we need to abandon needing the over-reliance on these tools and instead think about using a lot of different ways to measure attribution. And tenet number 5, this might be a new one for someone, but I actually think that this is a major unlock, and it's going to be on my predictions in 2022 on Thursday with Gaetano, is that the secret weapon for a marketing team in 2022 is getting customer insights from their community that they built. Without a doubt, that's the number one. If you're our marketing team, that's the number one thing that you can do in all of 2022. Not going to show up in a bunch of attribution reports. Not going to give you a bunch of leads, but it's going to give you the insights from customers to think about how to message your product differently, how to inform the product roadmap, how to get people talking about your company and brand, how to get people aware of the differentiation between your company and the other 6 companies that are in your category, and the million other benefits of doing this. And so I think that is going to be, at Refine Labs, we've clearly proven out, and I mentioned it on a previous podcast, that I actually believe that the number one benefit of doing this whole activity, and we'll probably generate more than $100 million in ARR pipeline this year from this whole activity, and the customer insights are the most valuable thing. It's not even close. Like it's the reason that we're able to have this go and have you show up, and the reason that we're able to iterate messaging and develop a unique differentiated offering and think differently is because of the insights that get generated through this activity every week. So 5 tenets, I think a lot of people should think about those. Those are things that I think are trends in the market that are undeniable, that I just see most marketers not respecting. So moving into 2022, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to think about looking at marketing a little bit differently. So just recap real quick for everyone. Number 1, marketing is not sales. Number 2, we need to look at marketing in a long-term view over quarters of time, not weeks of time. Number 3, the number one thing that marketing teams need to do is create demand, and the best way to create demand is in dark social. Number 4 is we need to respect the attribution mirage. Attribution software is giving marketers a ton of bad data and informing bad strategies. Number 4, just to clarify here, it's not the attribution software's fault. It's how the attribution software is being used and how over-reliant people are in using those decisions. The software is fine. Number 5 is the number one thing that marketing teams could do this entire year is generate a revolving cycle of customer insights through a community that they build. And there we go. That's the one topic. We can go into questions. Maybe there's some things that got sparked in there. I got the chat up here. It's a new feature in our little setup here. So I got the chat so I can see what people are saying. And let's get into it.
Yeah, we've got a few people on deck for questions. So Allison, I'm going to bring you on first. So good to have you on Demand Gen Live. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for letting my kids pop in. My daughter is obsessed with marketing, and my son had to join too. So I had a question, actually. The phrase doing marketing and sales channels really resonates with me. I think actually one of the main reasons I joined the Refine Labs team is because I felt personally like I was being pushed into a sales enablement role at my old company. My title was Director of Demand Gen, but I think marketers by nature are problem solvers. And so whenever there was issues with the bottom of the funnel, they would look to, my guidance, my team's guidance. And after you solve a few of those issues, you start to lose momentum at really creating that demand at the top of the funnel. And so my question is, if anyone finds themselves in a similar position, like what are some tactics or ways that you can sort of reposition yourself as being, supportive of sales enablement, but kind of take that focus back to the demand generation tactic of it all?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to ask a question back to you and see what you say. So, do you think that that because you had done a couple of those projects that had been successful, the company wanted you to move further in there, or do you think that it was because of the company culture of how they thought about marketing and sales that you just were over there?
Well, I did report to the chief revenue officer, which kind of, I think, gives you, there was no CMO. And so that, marketing, instead of being marketing led, sales driven, it was really like sales driven, marketing supported. But there was a lot of like respect for marketing and for what we did, but the emphasis was much more on like, how do we close deals, not how do we like create better demand so that people are ready to buy.
Yeah, I mean, so I've worked in companies like this before, companies that respect marketing a lot, but the culture of the company is that like sales is the most important function, marketing is a support function, and when those cultures exist, marketing just gets moved to being, I've said it in a post before, being sales assistant. That's what that worked at companies where that's basically what it is. Like they hired you, you're a senior marketing manager or something like that, but you're really only doing sales enablement and field marketing. And field marketing is a lot of just like basically being sales assistant. So there's the options here, and I've been in companies before and actually made quite a bit of progress on this, but the reality of the situation is that you're unlikely to make a significant change here in a more developed and established organization to a level that I would, some people might think it's fine, but to a level that I would want in my environment as a marketer. I don't think that most people will have success getting that far, just because the culture is deeply rooted, and as a director or manager level employee, it's difficult to do that. But some of the things that you could do is share content. The thing that I was able to do is to show that thing that one of the things that matters the most about whether you close a deal is how they get into your how a person gets into your pipeline. And so being able to show the company, hey, when we cold call and then the sales rep drives 3 hours to a meeting, we win those deals at 4%. And when we run demand gen and companies come to us, to our website and say, hey, I want your sales rep to come show me this, and then the sales rep drives the same 3 hours to a different hospital, and we win those meetings at 39%, that you start to see, hey, actually, like maybe we should spend a little bit more effort getting more of these people that come to our website that want to buy. And so I think that's probably the number one. It's based in logic, it's based in revenue and performance. Sometimes with companies, they don't give it enough time to actually show that effect. And the effect that I mentioned was quite dramatic. It probably wouldn't be as dramatic in most companies, but that really was the data that we had. And so I think showing that component is helpful, but generally, and this is something that I was, guilty is not the right word, but I did when I was earlier on in my career, is that when you look at sales and marketing more like an assembly line, that you think that all of once people are in the sales process, that all the answers to fixing it are inside of the sales process, but they're not. The best answer is looking back at the beginning and saying, who's getting into our process? How do we get people so it's the number one way to impact pipeline is not by having marketers do this a lot, is not by trying to set up an event for people that are in stage 3 or sending them like direct mail or all the other things that marketers do that salespeople are fully capable of doing them on their own. And so instead of doing those things, marketers should be focused on how do we get the people that actually want to buy to enter the process. And would love to go with a follow-up here because it's not a clean cut or easy situation.
Well, and I'm lucky because I joined Refine Labs, so maybe that's the other alternative.
Oh, yeah.
No,
for any director of demand gen people that are stuck doing field marketing and sales enablement, come over here. We'll do some real demand.
Exactly. No, thank you. I hope that's helpful for other people as well.
Cool. Great to have you and the kids here.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, we have a question from the YouTube live stream. So I have to sneak this in here before I get back to bringing folks on live from the show. So this is from Spencer. He's watching live on YouTube. Do you have a way to advocate for demand gen through dark social? Attribution, projection models, or what finance and the CEO look for normally? So I think he's looking for some tips about how to talk to his executive team about implementing dark social strategies and tactics.
Yeah, totally. We've figured out a good way to measure this. It's a little bit different than how companies do it right now. Some executives are just going to keep doing the same dumb shit they've been doing for the past 10 years, but the stuff actually gives you a lot of good insights. The number one thing that we've done is just put "How did you hear about us?" on our main conversion form, Spencer. And so like a majority of our revenue comes through, and for SaaS companies, the same effect would happen, which is a majority of marketing sourced revenue will come through your website to the main CTA, which will be get a demo, or for us, it's get a consultation. And on that, we just took out a field that was unnecessary, which is like a message, what product are you interested, something like that, just a generic message field. And instead of having that field, we just added one that said, "How did you hear about us?" and made it required. And people literally type in. And one of these days, maybe before next Demand Gen Live, Megan and Angelica hold me accountable. I'm going to come here next week and I will read 20 of them to you so you can understand what we're getting. It's crazy stuff. People write multiple sentences about what's going on. Who was the exact person that referred them? How they discovered us. Maybe they discovered us on LinkedIn, then started listening to the podcast, then started doing this. They tell us everything. And for those, like maybe some companies aren't going to buy into it, but smart people should. Like there's nothing better. Like it's crazy that people will trust what the software tells them more than what the customer says to them verbatim from either typing or saying it verbally. And so how'd you hear about us is a perfect way to do it. It's super low lift. It gives you a lot of data. And if you have a successful paid, like a successful dark social strategy, then we have 84% of our pipeline comes from the four main dark social sources: social media, podcast, community, word of mouth. 84% of our pipeline comes from that. And we measure that through just requiring that people tell us how they heard about us. It's not complicated. So that's one. Another one is you could survey customers. So I did this in 2017. So you could actually survey decision makers at those accounts and ask them what source of information that they trust and what source of information that they use. And you could go analyst firms, Google search, our website or competitors' websites, sales reps, your peers, influential people or KOLs, conferences, all these different things. And you can go and see what are the sources that your buyers trust the most. It's mostly dark social places, or it's most often the people that are in where the information comes in dark social. So there's more, but just in the interest of gone through that in depth, maybe we can link to a different episode, the attribution mirage for Spencer here. But those are a couple of ways that we do it, and it works great. I'm fascinated that more companies don't do it. Some of our customers don't even do it. It makes no sense. But there's a ton of value in literally just asking them.
And curating our questions expertly tonight, because I'm going to bring Pablo on next, who is having a challenge convincing one of his clients to implement self-reported attribution. So let's talk through a real life example here with Pablo. Pablo, welcome to the show.
Hey, Megan. Hey, Chris. Happy New Year.
What's up, Pablo? Happy New Year, man. Good to see you.
What's up, buddy? Hope you got some good pow in the New Hampshire slopes down there.
No, it was groomers, but it's okay.
All right, cool. Man, you are really expert curating, Megan. Thanks. And Chris, I feel like you're just like Nostradamus with what I'm struggling through and going through. I showed up here literally just to ask you about this form, but then you going through these 5 tenets was just like, this is really the conversation I'm having, right? And like, as you know, right? Like I'm not a marketer by trade, but I stumbled into doing this kind of very similar motion of the live, interaction with your clients and community that leads
just
to
be clear for
podcasts and
people
blah, blah,
too.
blah.
Like I wasn't a marketer by trade either. I was an engineer. And over time, and you probably figured this out a little bit too, Pablo. What I figured out is that if you want to like grow a business, that marketing is the best way to do it. It's marketing a product. So anyway, sorry for the deviation, but most people, if they're truly business people, will start to realize that, and it happened for me starting in like 2014. It's like, wow, like the number one place with the biggest opportunities to impact a business for a function that is kind of like stuck and stale was marketing. Anyway, let's keep going.
100% agree. And just the giant arbitrage between like what people think marketing is and what it can
Yeah,
be
you're
versus
right
sales
on.
to me is another thing, right? I also love Omar's Chris Nadamas. I think it's great. So year one, right? Like this is my longest running client. That's like my base case study of everything that I found on, right? So it's the most advanced kind of like where I'm at in this level of doing this thing. Year one, it crushed because it completely captured all the existing demand. And it also coincided with COVID, right? Like we were doing this before COVID, so people rushed to it. It was amazing. Like it was like a no holds barred waterfall of just like, I'm the most smartest guy in the world. And then as it started maturing, we kind of hit this moment where we kind of harvested all the low hanging fruit, and then it kind of looked like it took a dip back, and then it stabilized back based on a couple tweaks we've made. But looking forward, I'm very intent on let's move away from what ideas I can come up with and let's move towards how we get feedback. And my number one advice for him, I'm getting feedback, is on your site where it says book a call, put in the form, right? And I'm just trying to get some advice because I know you've had this conversation a ton of times. His fear is they have an amazing company, right? Like their sales process is great, their customer success is amazing, and their fear is that when they add a form, they've spent 15 years figuring out what a lead is to them, right? And they finally decided that first name, last name, phone number, and email is lead, right? Okay. So I'm just like, add this form, make it required. I'm trying to tell him that.
Can we just stop and laugh at that for 1 second?
It's cool. Please.
That like so the and I'm totally, this isn't making fun of you, Pablo. It's just like break this down for people though. The definition of a lead is that they get first name, last name, email, and phone number.
Correct.
Yeah.
So and background in that is just like, do they include phone number and email or just email, right? Like versus what a lead is kind of thing. And it's and it's been, they've gone through a hard time figuring it out, man, to be really empathetic with it all, of just like how does it count and how are they going to track all this stuff, because they have this awesome data flywheel. And their fear is if you add this other field, now they need to go back to all this like mental effort that they did on figuring out what a lead is. And I'm trying to tell them, listen, man, somebody that doesn't fill in that field, that is too lazy to just write an X and press submit, isn't a lead that you're going to have. This isn't going to impact your revenue. But I'm trying to figure out, and I'm like, Chris Walker says this, and like I send him your stuff all the time.
Sure.
But I'm trying to figure out what's the conversation of, I have two questions. Number one is, what's the best approach on this conversation? And two, like, how do we crawl there, right? Like I have a couple of ideas of how we can work up to that, but I always just kind of show up here and ask for a soundbite from you to just put it in front of someone's face. Like, what's the conversation of just like, what would you say to them of having this?
How big's the company and employees or revenue, just so I have a sense of scale?
85 employees, 150 million in revenue.
It's a pretty fucking good revenue per employee. It's doing pretty good. Holy cow. You said 85 employees with more than 100 million in revenue. That's really cruising there. Okay, so there's a pretty considerable amount of scale here. And did you mention that things are slowing down, or like it sounded like things were they were growing and then it kind of stabilized off because they weren't creating demand. It's just when you were mentioning that, and I'm going to answer the question, I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. It was like growing and then it declined. Now it's kind of like stabled off, which like sort of makes sense to me, but it's typically not how like organic market demand would flow. But that's pretty much what happened, and now it's stable.
Yeah. So a couple reasons. One was there was some pent up demand, right? Like they are kind of in this category where they have vertically integrated.
They benefited from the pandemic, essentially.
They benefited from the pandemic. It's never been a better time in history to invest in their asset class. Okay. And now it's kind of on the other side of like, am I too late for this asset class?
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Perfect. That's great. So a couple of thoughts here. One, nobody's forcing you to do this, right? If you as the company don't want to put this on your forum and don't want to get the amazing insights to get a better strategy, to get an edge on competitors and continue to win, then go ahead. Keep looking at software, getting the wrong data, and slowly make worse and worse decisions. So like the the idea that this company, $115 million revenue company, or some of the companies that like we interact with, let's just say same thing, $115 million revenue company, is probably spending somewhere between $10 and $20 million a year on marketing. And this thing costs you $0 to add and will deliver the best ROI of anything that you can do in marketing. Just to literally ask, when buyers want to buy, how did they hear about you? For sure. I see everything in marketing. I've been in 100 Salesforce instances. I've seen all the good stuff that people are doing, all the great attribution setups, all the cool looker dashboards, all the other things. There's not a better ROI that I've ever seen in marketing than putting this on your form so that you can see the reality of what's happening in the world. Because otherwise you're just buried around here listening to other people and not seeing the truth. So that's what I would say to somebody, is just like pushing them logically to think about the effort of this is zero and the ROI of it is huge. The second piece of it is, if you really care about having email, name, phone number, and last name, first name, last name, email, phone number, then just ask for email, buy an enrichment software. You're a $115 million company, buy enrichment from ZoomInfo or something like that. Just ask for email and how'd you hear about us, and enrich the rest, phone number, email, and you could even get company, job title, state, all this other cool stuff. And so that would be an alternative if they're really concerned about having an extra field. Buy enrichment software, that's something that companies, or buy enrichment data, that's something that companies could do. And yeah, those are a couple of the key options. If this $115 million company wants to be a $1.15 billion company and continue to grow, I believe that this is, and their demand has stalled out, I believe this could be an unlock that could help them figure out how to drive the strategy. So that's what I would say.
That's really good. Yeah, the enrichment stuff I would have never come up with, because again, I don't come from this world, right? So that's really good, really good feedback. So the big fear, what would you say to the fear of, I think their fear is that the amount of leads are going to significantly drop because of one more field. Is that just like is that a false thing? Because my response to that is, somebody that isn't going to write no thanks at the very least and hit submit isn't really serious about getting on, so it's not going to affect revenue. Is there a way to kind of test that before unlocking it on their website? Like if they have other channels that they can test it on, kind of thing?
They could A/B test it if they want. Go ahead and set it up, run an A/B test. We're doing it on several companies right now. I'm not going to speak on anything because it's preliminary data, and I'd rather have a robust report to show people that there's no impact here. But we have A/B tests active on several different main conversion forms at companies to measure this initial data, showing that this is not a concern. And in our own data, we implemented this field sometime in the second quarter, or either late second quarter, or early third quarter of last year, and we have seen absolutely no decline in our pipeline. Our pipeline has more than doubled since we set it up. You know why? Because we're getting good insights and then marketing based on the insights. And so it's not a zero-sum game. You put the field on it and less people convert, but we put the field on it and we're not seeing less people convert, and then you have all the insights to do better marketing to get more people to the forum so more people convert. But yes, we are actively testing, and we'll be publishing reports, because it's the same dumb excuse that everyone makes of, oh, the conversion rates go down, aka I just don't want to do anything different. I'd rather just say no. So we'll publish that report for 3 to 5 companies whenever it's available.
That's awesome, man. That makes a lot of sense. And like, maybe I might have to just wait till you publish that report of your
I wouldn't be holding your breath. It might be a couple of months.
Okay. And then the last thing was, tell me what you think of this formula, right? Like if we now have 2 years of data, right? Because now back to tenet number 3, demand happening in the dark social, and how can we kind of track that stuff? Our idea is to compare the people that have like shown up live and to people that have invested with them, right? Like signed contracts with them and become clients. They have a 3-call sales process. Also regress it to how many people got to the first call, second call, third call versus close based on coming live on the show. And then also run that similarity, like understand the incidence of people being inside the Facebook group and or people being connected to social media. And we're thinking about just running correlations to understand the influence of whether or not they had consumed the content, at what point in the journey they consumed the content, to see if, call one to call two based on content consumption, like what the different percentages of moving on next in the sales process is to this. Am I overthinking it? Am I, I don't know.
You took the words out of my mouth, man. That's exactly what I was going to say. You're way overthinking it, and you're looking at it too narrow-minded, right? So like, look around, and I know all the people that come to these events, and I've seen the people that have come to them over the past 91 weeks since we've been doing it. Like, it's not about the event only, right? Like, most of the people that come to these events don't buy from us. I don't care about that. Like, I love helping everyone. I love doing the event. Like, that's not what it's about for me. And so looking at it directly of just like how many attendees that came to our event eventually became customers is short-sighted. Looking at it just about who was in the Facebook group that then was, I believe, is also short-sighted, because it's about the people that come to the event, that listen to the podcast, that then go tell one of their manager level friends, and the manager level person starts listening to the content on a podcast and then forwards it to the CMO, and then the CMO comes inbound. You see what I mean? Like, that's really the way that it's happening right now, is that there's this network effect, dark social, where the sharing is happening in so many different places and things that can't be tracked, that there's literally no sense in trying to track it. And the easiest way to track it would be to ask your customers either on the phone or in the form. And so instead of like, it's hilarious. I don't want to I don't want to say it, come off that way, but it's funny that like the solution that you had come up with to overcome the customer not wanting to put one field in their form is that super complicated like modeling, right? Like, and you actually, I think, get better outcomes just by putting it on the form.
Super valuable, man. I
Yeah,
really
man.
appreciate your advice. And Dark Funnel for the win. I referred somebody your way to be your next head of product marketing, who is on the call today. I'm not going to blow him up, but
appreciate you.
I sending people your way, man. I
Thank
think
you.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I'll take appreciate that, Pablo. I'll take a moment to just let you know, the plan at Refine Labs here is to hire 41 people or to have 41 new people start at the company in this quarter. So if you are interested, we have a ton of different roles posted in a ton of different areas in finance, a lot in marketing, creative, demand, obviously, paid media, customer success, ops, like all across the board. We're hiring for people, and so if you're interested, we'd love to see if you could be part of the team.
All right. Thanks for the recruiting plug, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Rob, thanks for your patience. You're up next. Pablo, good to have you on as always. That was great back and forth. And Rob, excited for you to come on and ask your question. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. So we were talking earlier about the relationship between sales and marketing. And typically this conversation comes from the angle of what's wrong, right? The brokenness between sales and marketing. But I guess I would ask you, Chris, to frame it differently. If you could describe the relationship between sales and marketing, if it were in a vacuum, right, hypothetically, or if you were building it from the ground up.
We are. It's perfect. If there's more to your question, I definitely want you to finish. But we're building it ourselves right now, and I'd love to speak to it because we're getting really good outcomes. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything's working great. But I want to let you finish your question first. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's good. It's just, it's hard sometimes when you're always coming at it from a fixing angle. And I think to describe the theory and the abstract of how the relationship works would be a helpful thing, just to kind of hear you articulate that.
So just to make sure I understand your question correctly, to abstractly communicate when it's working well and there's nothing that needs to be fixed. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can simply describe the situation that we have on our go-to-market team here at Refine Labs. We have a marketing team of about 6 people. We have a sales team of one full-time rep and 2 or 3 part-time salespeople that also do other jobs. We're a 70-person company, so the go-to-market team is about, 12-15% of the entire company. And the things that we've set up at the company in order for this to be truly successful is, one, we have true alignment at the executive level about the go-to-market strategy. How are we going to do it? How are we going to follow up? What are the things that we're definitely not going to do because it doesn't align with how buyers buy and our customers don't want us to do those things? What are the things that we're definitely going to do? How are we going to optimize? What are we going to measure? All of these different nuances in our marketing team, we have perfect alignment on what we're doing. So step one is that. This next thing is that we have a clear, well-defined ICP with a focused strategy, right? So we know exactly who the right people are, who the right companies that we're going after are. We know exactly what pain points they have, and we know exactly that we have a differentiated, unique solution that they can't get anywhere else that they need. A couple of components there that are totally at the strategy level that if not in the right place, the rest of the stuff is broken, right? So having alignment at the go-to-market strategy level typically is the beginning of where it cracks. And then when we think about from an execution, more moving into the execution standpoint, we have put the company in a position where we don't need to do the wrong things, bring on the wrong customers, or sacrifice our values or the customer experience in order to get new revenue. That creates an incredible environment, a better environment that I've ever been to as an employee for the people that are working in sales and marketing, because we're playing ahead, we're playing offense. We're not trying to catch up on goals because the goals are too large or some different reason like that. Because then when you have goals that are too large and a culture like that, it creates some fear, it creates the wrong behaviors, and then you have like a cycle going. So putting the company in a position with the right goals that are achievable, I think, is a third ingredient. We've implemented here a straight no commission plan sales team. More to be as we scale it out. I'll continue to talk about what we're learning through it. But it creates great alignment with customer outcomes. It removes all the issues of having 6 people in there to try and figure out what commission plans are and the different structures. And the third part is we pay people more than the OTE in salary. So while there's sales reps out there that are like, yeah, you'll get 160K OTE, and then they make 60K base and they only get to 120 because they never hit quota because the goals are unrealistic. So they make 120 on a 160 OTE. We just pay them 200K salary. And then we can do things that are we can do in 200K, which is a number of people that are wondering. I'm like, the salaries are ranging for people. And having just a salary only makes routing way easier. We have our salespeople can post on LinkedIn and not have to worry about whether they get credit for the deal if they create the demand and someone else closes it or someone else comes inbound and it gets routed somewhere else. So we operate as a full cohesive team instead of individuals trying to get credit for certain things so we can hit our quota, or marketing trying to make sure that the deal comes inbound, not outbound. All that stuff goes away when you remove commission plans. So those are a couple of the things that we've seen that we've implemented here as necessary ingredients to having a customer-focused, aligned go-to-market team where marketing and sales are operating in a really healthy, productive, successful way.
That's awesome. Yeah, as I think about kind of a unified team revenue, I have 5 points. You hit 4. The 4 are exactly aligned. And the only one that I would add would be measuring and optimizing for the correct metrics, the ones that actually drive the strategic business outcomes for the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of bucket that into go-to-market strategy, but you're right. The metrics are everything. It incentivizes and drives all the different behavior. So it's kind of a blend between the strategy. There's some commission things that create metrics around them. But yeah, our strategy works so well because, I literally tell people on the podcast exactly what we're doing. We're aligned on one thing: high intent conversions on our website of people saying, hey, I would love to talk to you about buying this stuff. We have a calendar link right there. The people that submit the form, book a calendar. 85-90% of the people that show up that filled out that form are qualified. 95+% of the people that are qualified that have the calendar link show up to the meetings. We have this ridiculous conversion from submission to first meeting because of how we go to market and how efficient we are there. And then we win a considerable amount of deals because of how we market. We create demand so that buyers are super educated, so that when they come and talk to us, we don't have to convince them about our philosophy or our strategy or the nuances of the attribution mirage, because we've done enough marketing that people understand these things, so that when they come in, we're just talking through, is this going to be a good fit? What's your baseline numbers? What are your goals? Are we going to be able to do that for you? Let's get moving.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, man. Great segment. That was a cool topic.
All right. I have Tamar on next. Tamar, why don't you come on? I'd love for you to share your question around the product launch.
Sure. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey.
Okay,
Yes.
super. Thanks. Sorry, I'm in a very different time zone, so I don't have video on.
Great to have you here.
So I actually just started working in marketing in general in July. I came from design journalism, and it's actually been really nice because we came to a startup that is growing and is really into the idea of demand gen. And so it's been really interesting just to kind of like learn marketing at the same time as doing something that's, I think, kind of related to some kind of aspect of design journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to have our product launch next July, so like in 6 months basically. So it's going to be like a web-based mapping as a service product for kind of infrastructure for engineering firms, things like that.
I'm actually quite familiar. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so all of a sudden I'm gonna have to, well, like all of a sudden there'll be like a totally different, let's say, a sort of interaction or ability to kind of gather data or things to react to, because now I'm interacting with people like on LinkedIn or we have a podcast as well, but we don't have, these kind of people getting into the kind of like funnel for
yeah, you have nothing to sell, so
yeah.
people aren't in the pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do stuff on like commission, but not this sort of like online open to anybody.
Okay.
So I was curious, what would be some of your tips like for this kind of first week or first 2 weeks? Like, what is the most important thing to focus on? Because I think it'll be a bit crazy in the startup, but I want to have like things that I know to look for and things that I know to react to.
The first week of the launch in July, or like these next couple weeks right now?
Well, I mean, also like, I guess leading up to it.
Yeah.
It's sort of kind of when there's all of a sudden this interaction that we just didn't have before.
Yeah. Who's the buyer? Who will be the buyer of the product? Job title and type of company?
So basically we do subsurface utility mapping. So it can be a lot of different kinds of people. I don't think they will be able to buy directly like on the first day, but they'll get sort of a hint of what kind of results come out from this, the map interface.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be, for example, project managers. It could also be it could also be like people who also locate utilities and want to check their results. Could be owners of like a large project site. Could even be governments, but they probably won't because there's more kind of restrictions on them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a very big range, right?
Yeah, this is a great place to start. So we'll start here and keep going.
Yeah.
So I asked that because typically companies that come into this don't actually know who is the person that we're selling to. Why exactly do they need us?
Right.
And so that would be like the step one. Companies that come in with a utility product like what you have, right? I know that's utility mapping, but it's kind of like a product that can be used for a bunch of different applications. And when it can be used for a bunch of different applications, they try and basically sell it horizontal. And in a lot of cases, it would be much better to go to market initially vertically set, highly targeted with a specific use case that those people need. Project managers at like whatever utility companies that are less than 1,000 employees, or something else that you said for oil and gas mining companies that are based in the southeastern United States. I don't know what it is, but like dialing in exactly who it is and exactly the use case and application and why they need to use you over anything else is the number one thing. So you have 6 months to kind of like figure that out. Spending time doing so, I would go out and identify the project managers, the other people that you mentioned in these different types of companies, and start to evaluate what do they see about the viability of your product? If you talk to many of them, you will start to understand what are the biggest problems associated with the space that you're looking into, and does your product fill it? And so, of course, like there's tons of different use cases for things, just like our company could do marketing for any type of company, right? But we found, and in my career, I've done this from, if you exclude the stuff at Refine Labs, I've done this for at least 5 companies as an employee or at Refine Labs myself, which is that as you cut out like buyers and say, we aren't going to target these people because these exact people are exactly who we want, and you focus messaging directly at them and you focus sales resources directly at them with a message and a talk track that you know works, that you have way more success. And then as the company grows, right, from startup, no revenue to 10 million ARR, then add the next application, then add the next use case. Then you start to have more flexibility in how you can expand out. But most companies start broad and just stay broad. And I found that it's way more valuable to start narrow and then broaden as you have success. So that's one, but let's keep going because there's more. There's more in this. We're only 3 months in. We still have a long 3 months to the launch. So the customer research is a big thing. The second thing that I would do once you have that answer, which hopefully you can tease out in the next 90 days, after that I would spend time creating the infrastructure for a community for those people. So that on launch day, you have an event, a social network, and one content platform that is active, that you have content on, that some people know about, that maybe people are engaging, that you've gotten more insights, right? I mentioned it was the 5th tenet, and one of my main predictions of the most valuable activity you can do in 2022 is get customer insights driven through community. So that would be the second thing that I would do in prep. Those 2 things should inform product marketing, messaging, website design. Then all those things get laid out and ready. Then you actually go and launch. And we can talk about the first weekend of launch after, but I'll pause there and see if you have any questions up to that point.
Okay. No, I mean, it sounds, I think, really insightful in a way, because I guess if you're targeting like tons of possible different customers, then you don't really know if the people that have showed up or the people that have, responded in this community, like if it's kind of random, or if you're actually sort of hitting kind of like the target people that you want to hear. I mean, the other thing, I guess, like we will have a product marketer as well by that point. So I will still be doing like focusing on demand gen. So yeah, it's a big privilege. But yeah, I think as well, like, the stats quantification aspect is like something I'm really weak on. So I was thinking, like, is there kind of a metric that would, from your perspective, sort of be useful to look for in that week, because like I think with demand gen, a lot of it is I would say sort of qualitative and then very earnest, like look trying to engage the people and sort of getting really deep into the subject matter. But yeah, I think like all of a sudden there'll be a kind of response, right? There'll be something to measure there.
Yeah. Couple notes on this. One, you mentioned that you'll have a product marketer so that you won't need to do that. And this is more for everyone. It's just like, just because there's somebody else in your company that has the title product marketer doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about product marketing. Right. And so I think this isn't directed toward you. This is just a lesson for everyone, because I've seen it a lot and I've experienced it myself, is that the value of you as a marketer long-term in your career, or even short-term in the next like 24 months, is the ability to look at all of the functions of marketing and wrap it together. Not being like kind of this like one-trick pony. I can run ads and, grab leads and push them through a funnel, right? Like because when you expand out the horizons, like the event that we're doing could be a field marketer's job. The insights that I'm getting while we do it could be a product marketer's job. How I'm thinking about how we're going to revise the messaging based on the insights is definitely product marketing. How we're actually taking this repackaging and I'm going to post it on LinkedIn tomorrow morning would be demand. So so that's just an example of how to look at it all holistically. And then you mentioned metrics. I personally wouldn't do this, but you asked, so I'll give you a couple of different options. One thing that you could do is a couple of weeks. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, I just want to have something I can give to, like the CEO if he asks,
Yeah. So I personally wouldn't do this, but here's one that could work: is that like a month before you launch the product, run a survey to a certain amount of customers. That's like 5 questions, and it has to come from a domain that's not yours because it'll bias the answers. So make it a third-party domain, sending the email and the survey. And then you can look at how many people like recognize the brand, how many people can associate with what it means, so you can look at before, how many people understood, who knew who we are, knew who it was, knew what we do, versus like a month after the launch, and then compare those two. So that's one thing that we've done that in a 6-month window with companies before, of like how many people heard about this brand before they started working with Refine Labs, and then 6 months later, how many people have heard about the brand, knew what they were doing, considered them their preferred brand, and where they heard about the brand. And it's like off the charts, so obvious how much more awareness and more relevance those companies have, measured by the input from their customers. And the customers say, how did you hear about that brand? Like 80% social media. And so those are some of the things that you could do. I personally would, we do it for some companies over a more long-term window. I wouldn't do it for such a micro thing as a launch with that timeline, but that's something that you could do. Another couple of things that you could do is look at just what you're trying to measure is how many people that didn't know about the product, that the product existed before, now know about it. So there's different ways to measure that, but I think that's what you want. If you're looking at a window of like a 2-week launch, you could run a bunch of lead gen. You could, like with a company with no revenue, maybe it would be an okay idea to run a bunch of lead gen so that your sales reps get some reps and you can learn some things. So you could do that and measure it on something like leads or meeting stat or something like that, which is not a recommendation that I make for growth stage companies because it's highly ineffective and unproductive when you have like 40 sales reps doing that. But when you have no revenue and you need to scrape your knees and learn some of those things, sometimes that is a decent option.
Thanks so much for all the suggestions.
Thank you. Where'd you tune in from, by the way? How far away are you?
I'm in Israel, but it's very, very late at night.
Great to have you. Yeah, what time is it?
Question.
3 a.m?
Yeah, about.
Awesome. Well, I hope it was worth it. Great to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you, Tamar. We have our second question from the YouTube live stream, so I'm going to sneak it in.
It's blowing
before
up.
I bring on one of my favorite.
Just a note for the listeners, right? We started YouTube live streaming, 5 weeks ago? Yeah. And first couple of weeks, 0 questions, almost 0 people live. How many people live do we have right now? 10. And now it's 10 people live, and we're getting multiple questions from the YouTube live stream, and we're going to continue to, it's a slow burn, people. A lot of people would be like, 10 subscribers on YouTube, 2 questions, fuck this. But just wait. Looking at marketing in the long-term view, tenet number 2. We'll get there and we'll prove it out. Sorry. Let's go.
All right. So this is from Nisa, who is watching the stream now. Interesting. It's similar to Tamar's last question about metrics, but really focused on tenet number 3, creating demand in dark social. So when creating demand, what 3 engagement metrics would you track to inform future efforts? I would broaden that too beyond just like a quantitative metric. Like, what are things that you would generally look at? I think her question was smart in helping you inform future efforts.
Yeah. So the early indicators that I got and how I knew that like LinkedIn was going to work and that the podcast was going to be successful long before there was any quantitative data to support it is because if you're in there looking, you can see the response. right? Like if you had an event and 5 people were there and I said some stuff, like I can see when I'm looking and seeing when people drop off during certain segments. I'm looking and seeing when I say something when people nod their heads. And so it's the way to get the measure of engagement early on with these things, way before you're going to get any quantitative data to support it, is by being in there and looking for the qualitative. And a lot of times it's not there, right? Just posting and doing things sometimes, like you're not getting the response, right? You post on Instagram right now and you don't have a lot of followers, you're not getting a lot of reach. Not a lot of people are looking at your posts. You're not going to get the comments and the feedback and the engagement to actually even see that. And so, but I'm trying to caution, and that's why I thought about the question a little bit, because me coming out and saying like likes or comments or something like that it's misleading. There's a lot of nuances underneath that about why or why not to do certain things. And so it's like the thing that you want to measure is, are people consuming the message? Are people internalizing the message? Some of the ways that I get that is like on sales calls, people use the exact language that we use here. Like, so it's clear that people are consuming the message and internalizing it. People in the comments, people sharing things. But the interesting thing is that if you can truly come to grips and understand the things that I'm trying to say, where like you run an ad, a CEO like me take a screenshot of it, but I'm not the one who's going to be responsible for buying this HR tech. So I take a screenshot and I go into our people channel and I drop a screenshot and say, hey, can someone check this out? And then a director level employee looks at it and says, hey, actually, we don't need this right now. We got something else. And then we leave it for a little while. But then a couple months later, we realize that tool broke. And then the VP of people is like, let's do this. Look at that. We remember when Chris sent this, let's go look at them. And then we go and look at that. And so I'm telling you the journeys that happen. These are all things that happen inside of companies. When I say those things, you all know that that's sometimes the way that you buy things. And so because of if you can internalize how complex and nonlinear and untrackable all these things are, that what you really need to know is, do we have the right strategy? Are we communicating effectively with our target market where they're internalizing it? And if those two things are in place, then the rest figures itself out. Those are the 2 breaking points. Do we have the right strategy? Meaning, is our product targeted at the right people with the right story? Right? Do we have the right strategy? And secondly, can we communicate that story to those people? If you really simplify it out, it really is that simple. And companies most companies that I audit and look at miss in both places. They're telling a suboptimal story, and they're telling it in channels where people aren't paying attention. So shout out to the YouTube live stream. I don't think there's a back and forth like we can do on the Zoom, but those are my thoughts on the things to look for. And just to iterate back, it really is looking deeply inside of each of the things to look at how people are responding at a one-to-one level.
Hope that answered your question, Nisa. Let us know. All right, I've got my two favorite closers back to back. Omar and then David are going to close out the show tonight strong. They both have 2 really, really good questions. So Omar, you're up first. Welcome to the show.
Fantastic. And
hey, buddy.
Year, Megan.
Sorry I missed you. I'm not ducking you. I've just been so busy. So
no,
we'll get back to you soon.
I totally get it. I was thinking about it. I was like, he's probably just been super busy because I just started the week and it's just been nuts.
Oh, it's rolling.
So little context, and then I have an interesting question for you, and I'm wondering how much you can share. So for the marketers that are listening, try new things and don't listen to people because people don't know shit. So last week I was hosting a webinar myself for medical device salespeople, and I was going to do it on Thursday at 4 or 5 p.m. It was late in the day. Everybody told me oh, you only have 2 days to promote this. It's really late. It's end of the quarter. No one's going to show up. And I was almost stupid enough to listen to that. And I went ahead and did the webinar. 95 people showed up live. I've never had that many people showing up, right? And so part of the talk was about this.
Can I talk on that for one quick? That's just, it's so interesting. On the like not just listening to what people say, right? And the like not doing a certain event because it's at the time. Like a lot of people would tell me at the beginning, LinkedIn's a business platform. Don't post on the weekends. Nobody's there. And then I would go in there and literally everyone still used LinkedIn and nobody posted. And I would go in for, I think 6 weeks in a row, I would go in there and put a post in and it would get more than 1 million views 6 weeks in a row because everyone was listening. Everyone was listening to everyone else, what everyone's saying. And we're not going to post on the weekends while everyone else was there. And so there's been like, that's one example, an extreme one, but it's like, it was, I can't say that if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have been successful because we definitely still would have been. But those are some of the examples of when like trying it for yourself is better than listening to someone that doesn't actually do it either.
Absolutely. I mean, like without data, everybody just has an opinion, right? And most of the time when you look, you're like, these people don't know what the hell they're talking. Like the people who are telling me this, they're not marketers, they're not salespeople. They're just people, it's like people who go eat food and they're like, oh, I can open a restaurant. But so that was really eye-opening because again, it was end of the quarter, end of the year, all these things why it would not work. And of all the webinars I've ever done in my life for companies, like this did well.
Yeah.
So the topic was about salespeople, and I guess my thesis around that the future salesperson, at least in the med device world, is kind of a hybrid. Somebody who actually knows marketing principles, does marketing and content-based stuff in demand, but does it in a way that, helps them sell. So the question that I got, which was a reasonable question, and hearing you talk earlier about what you guys are doing at Refine Labs, I'm wondering how much you can share. The question was, well, a salesperson said, if I become this hybrid where I'm still a sales rep, but I learn how to engage with customers on LinkedIn. I create my own content. I do all these things, right? And I create demand. But what if that demand doesn't happen in my territory and I just help other people in the rest of the country?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I hear your point. I said, but that technically will indirectly help you because if the whole thing is you're trying to push technology adoption, if it gets adopted in other places, that makes it easier for you to penetrate your market. But I was hoping if you can kind of like think out loud about this new salesperson, because I think part of the problem is that when it's purely focused on quota, everyone's focused about, let me win myself. And that doesn't really help the company. That doesn't help push the team further or the adoption of the technology. So I think that the incentives are just misaligned. And until you fix those incentives, people aren't going to adopt. And I think this is one of the big reasons why, I mean, you're in devices as well. I think that a lot of salespeople didn't adopt these kind of philosophies that you had and that I had was because they weren't incentivized in a way that changed that behavior.
Almost no sales reps are incentivized for this behavior, right? It's across the board. And if you did this in any type of company that has a territorization, you'd run into the exact same thing, which is that a sales rep will go out and do some things, right? Doing it on LinkedIn, it's a global platform, organic. You can't really control who sees it. And all of a sudden, they start having a little bit of success. And some people, they got the SoCal territory or San Diego territory. And all of a sudden, all these people on the East Coast are engaging and buying, but that's not helping them hit their quota. I mentioned this in the sales segment. It's like, this is part of the reason why I think that commission plans and things like that maybe create misaligned incentives for what you actually want. The thing that I would say back to this rep is that if you actually did it well enough to start driving demand in other territories, the company would feel it. And then you'd have actually, if you did it well, you'd actually start to have leverage over the company because you are driving the demand through your profile that you own. And so if you actually got to a place, in the short term, you'd be helping other people hit quota. But if you actually played that out, right, like let's say we do it for 18 months, right, because none of this stuff happens overnight, but you do it for 18 months and you go from having 2,000 followers to having 24,000, everyone in the medical device industry or whatever industry you're targeting knows who you are because they see you on LinkedIn. You're driving demand in other territories. There's more inbound flow. people are like buyers are messaging you on LinkedIn, and then you have to pass that lead to somebody else so that people can see those things happening, that all of a sudden that company realizes that they need you more than you need them. And then you have an interesting kind of thing where other companies, if they're smart, would see that. So you'd be in a better market, or you could go out and quit the company, be an entrepreneur, figure out how to monetize that attention. There's a lot of different variables, but for the most part, nobody would do that because they're not incentivized short term to do it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering. I mean, again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but like right now at Refine Labs, like how do you have it set up for your salespeople? Because a salesperson is going to want commission, but I'm wondering if there's ways where you incentivize a person where, okay, if they capture a deal and it's not in their territory, maybe the company bonuses that person. It doesn't affect the other person's commission at all, but I feel like the company would want to pay for those kind of things. But yeah, I'm just wondering what ideas you might have. 'Cause I'm being asked this by some companies, and I'm like, I could actually influence because if I can influence even one company to adopt a different way, that's one domino that I need for the industry to start moving forward.
Yeah, I think that you're trying to do.
Give them a good base salary.
You're trying to do a remodel of the kitchen when you really need to knock the whole thing down and rebuild a different house. You know what I mean? You're trying to patch this into something that's broken and trying to fix a little thing when you really need to break it down and start over, I think is the main issue. I think why we're having so much success is because it was built from the ground up, and the executives in the company believe in this stuff, right? And the executives of the company believe it and do it, which attracts the right talent that believe it and do it. So a couple of nuances here. I don't know if this is going to help, but the first thing that comes to my mind is all of the people in our company that post on LinkedIn are experts in what our customers want and do, not sales reps that get commissioned when they buy stuff. And so that's the number one. So if companies wanted to do this, let's say that you're a medical technology company selling into I don't know.
Let's say a robotic company selling into the OR.
Robotics company selling into the OR, and your CSMs end up being the way that you hire and profile for the CSMs are the nurse practitioners. I'm making this stuff up. The nurse practitioners that assist with those surgeries with the robots. So then maybe your CSM, you need to figure out who are the people in the company that have the expertise that your customers want. So maybe it's the CSMs. So short answer is
I agree.
It's how we set it up, from both who's doing it and the incentive structure and why they're doing it are all ingredients of why it's working for us.
No, I completely. And just to kind of wrap up, to finish your analogy, I think you're right in that it's remodeling the kitchen, and you probably need to do the whole house. Maybe what I need to do is just figure out a way to pretend that we're remodeling the kitchen, but screw up the kitchen so bad and say we just gotta knock the whole thing down, guys. Sorry.
Or find the company that has a plot of land and doesn't have anything built yet.
That's who I'm trying to work with, because I mean, you and I both left out of med device for a reason. Things move slow there, and so I'm trying to work with the companies that don't even have a sales team yet, and so that at least they have a chance of thinking about it and structuring it differently. Yeah, so,
companies that just hit commercialization, just got approved by the FDA, with less than 5 reps, I think is a target.
Totally agree. Chris, thank you so much. Great to see you guys back. Megan, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Great to see you, Omar. We'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
Great segment. David always has the good questions, but tonight, bringing it back to the keynote that you opened with,
cool.
A question around that. So, David, good to have you as always.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How you doing, man?
It's good. I'm well, thank you. It's great to be back. So my question, in relation to the 5 tenets, okay, is demand gen?
Could you speak up a little bit? I'm not sure if it's me or
no,
is
it's
it
probably me.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So my question relating to the 5 tenets a little bit, right, is do you see, or would it be correct to say that demand gen and brand are converging a little bit? That what used to be more different is now more similar? Or what's the best way to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if, so that's kind of
Yeah.
my question. What do you think?
You're reading my mind, man. Brand and demand are the same thing, people. The only difference is whether you're using paid channels or organic channels. The only thing different is now the distribution. You got to know how to use both, and both of them get used in pretty much the same way, except that one, you get free, untargeted distribution, and the other one, you pay for targeted distribution. And so companies are like pushing both of these functions in different spectrums to make them different enough so they can still be two functions. So the brand team like does the colors and works on the PR and does a bunch of fluffy stuff that they know doesn't work, but they still do. And then the demand team really just runs marketing is doing sales, running lead gen, but they call it demand gen.
So what you've described is the classic worst case scenario.
Yes,
right?
that's the most common scenario of companies that haven't thought differently about brand and demand. Yeah.
Right. So, but what you're suggesting, and I, again, don't want to put words in your mouth, is the difference between brand motions and end goals of teaching, educating, informing, inspiring, attracting people to you, and demand generation seem to be coming together. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's such an interesting I'll push back to you. Like right now on this event, is it brand or demand? Or is it field?
For what?
Like,
Oh.
how would you classify this activity? Would you classify it as brand or demand?
It's both.
Yeah.
Right? And for you, right? It's perpetuating. It's sharing your way and your views. Okay. You're evangelizing.
Mm-hmm.
You're evangelizing not just for you but for your company, because now your company becomes the source of, if I want to do these good ideas, go to Chris's company, right? So you're generating demand, but you're increasing the brand because people are going to share this in that dark social, or
Mm-hmm.
not even very dark social, bright light social. So it's definitely always both. Well, the reason, so then here comes a follow-up question.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if there's an answer to this necessarily, but then should demand gen report to brand, or demand gen has brand reporting to it? Does that become now a new question that we could ask if we're kind of putting together a marketing team?
Yeah. One's not reporting to the other because they're the same thing, right? So it's about just merging them together. And like, so if we were going to do it, and it's literally like in our plan to hire someone will be senior director, brand and demand.
So
yeah.
So this is interesting, because then, all right, so I'm just going to keep playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
Many companies have brand people, and for good reason, and I'm not here to denigrate anything that they do.
Totally.
It's important, it's absolutely useful, and they, it's a lot of hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then many people have demand people. And one might think that the other is moving their cheese. And so they start to have silo turf wars within brand and demand. Sorry, I'm kind of English, don't want to say demand.
Yeah.
So I guess that's going to be perhaps another episode. But as we talk about aligning sales and marketing, well, within marketing itself, there's the potential for turfdom, I suppose, where someone says, well, no, that's not demand gen, that's branding. I do that. I'm putting words in people's
Mm-hmm.
fictitious mouths here.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like those lines do kind of exist, because demand gen people are evolving, let's use that term carefully,
Okay.
or moving into doing more branding type things, and the branding people saying, no, that's what we've always done. Why are you coming into our space? So
Mm-hmm.
Obviously every company is a bit different. But I'm just kind of curious if perhaps this wouldn't come up in your customers because they've self-selected and they have already followed your ideas, and that's why they became your.
A lot of our customers, from a structural standpoint, still have two different teams that do this, right? So a lot of the things that I talk about, I think are things that our customers, I hope that they consider. It's what we're having success with. I see a broad view of a lot of different companies, and I see what's working and what's not. And I just like point out things that I see working for some companies where it's clear that when companies don't do it, it's not working for them. But just want to clarify there that a lot of our customers actually don't have this structure yet. It's about, to go on to your analogy a little bit, it's about redrawing the lines, right? Like, why are the lines there? Who decided that they should be there, that when you cross over it and now you're doing brand or demand? It's almost like get rid of all the lines and then think about redrawing them. So we have people, so just talk about what's working for us. We have people that are struck, like the strategy across the board for a lot of the channels. Like we have individual channel strategies, but the strategy at the top is we want to create content from a pillar like a live event or a keynote or speaking at a conference or something like that. We want to create a pillar piece of content that then gets repackaged and redistributed for the right channels. And so we have a team that's focused on TikTok. We have a team that's focused on YouTube. We have a team that's focused on LinkedIn. And then if you wanted to split that out again, you could have a team that's focused on LinkedIn, but a part of it is on organic and a part of it is on paid. Although my belief is that if you're running a channel, you should be running both paid and organic at the same time. The same person should command both of those things because they work together. And most companies just have them siloed with two separate strategies: paid lead gen, organic, fluffy stuff that buyers don't care about. And so it's just like almost rethinking the entire thing. Like if we forgot what was there before and we forgot the names brand and demand and we just called it like something new, demand, and then so we just called it something different and we said these are actually where the lines are. The line's actually gone way more farther out. I think that's what needs to be done. It's basically, let me try and figure out how to say this. It's something that I talk about a lot. It's about like removing old assumptions that are no longer true. And so in like 2009, they're like the demand team, let's make it more realistic, 2013, they probably didn't even call it the demand team back then, right? It was probably just a marketing manager. But there was people that were focused on generating a bunch of leads, and there was people that were focused on building trade shows, and there was people that were focused on, the PR. And in the companies that I worked at, the people that were doing that were all the same people. In larger companies, I get that it gets siloed out, but in like where I came from, marketers are holistic and cross-functional, which is why I'm encouraging people that think that they're only a product marketer to look and figure out field marketing and demand gen and brand and these types of things, because the breadth of skills and how these things work together is where all the magic is. Not by doing one individual thing. I'm kind of getting off the topic of your question, but I think that we should, let me think on this. I'll take a note of it. We got 2 actions for next week. I'll come back with more put together thoughts, David, on this topic. And we'll also come back and I'm going to read out loud for everyone on the podcast 20 submissions using the "How did you hear about us" that we get. I'll tell you what the submission was, the job title, and how many employees the company had. And you'll see the data that we're getting and the things that companies are missing out on because they think that this conversion rate's going to go down when they haven't even tested it.
That sounds great. One of the things that historically has created the difference is that demand gen, and the term was used going back before 2013, was focused on registrations and gating things. And one of the big differences is that you counted success by registrations there. Whereas branding didn't count success that way. It counted something else by web traffic or perhaps some other things.
Yeah, or brand awareness, like a survey or something like that. Yeah,
that kind of thing. And also, in the bigger companies, they have these separated out as groups because they're trying to drive efficiencies and scale. So, and a lot of smaller companies are aspiring to become bigger companies, and so they start to kind of emulate the structure a little bit, and you kind of grow up by growing into those patterns. I'm not here to say that that's the right thing or that it should be or shouldn't be. It's just that our natural process is to say, when we get bigger, we we specialize more, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I think what you're the thing that you're pointing out is that they don't need to be broken out the same way. When you've described drawing the lines differently, totally all for you. And I guess the sense I have is if a CMO is listening to this and you haven't figured it out, that's not because you're wrong. It's just because this is an evolving, changing situation. And so therefore, we're all evolving and trying to figure out how better to change to match the new way that people are buying. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. You mentioned that companies like that are small aspire to have structures like large companies. And when you said that, I smiled because I like have the exact opposite intention as we grow as a company, which would be that to figure out a way to create several mini businesses inside of a large business so that you have autonomy, decentralized leadership, can move faster, don't have to go into all these specializations, things like that I think that we'll watch how it plays out over the next couple of years. But I think it'll be a model that more companies move to so that you're more agile, you don't get big and slow, you can consistently innovate with different like new business units and things like that. Companies get stuck and don't innovate because they create this big machine. It's impossible to change, that you can't steer the ship, so you're just going to hit the iceberg.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It might depend a little bit on the kind of product you produce. If you're producing a battleship or ocean liners or something, you've got a completely different kind of sales process and timelines than maybe certain types of services. But
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I'll give it a little bit more thought, especially on because I've talked about it a little bit on previous podcasts, that it's clear to me executing that when executed properly, brand and demand are the same thing, and what we should really be looking. So if you align on the strategy, both of those things are trying to accomplish the same thing now, which is drive highly qualified, highly educated buyers to come to you ready to buy, that create pipeline and revenue at a super high rate. So that's the objective. And then so same thing, and then just how you get it done is what channel, and is it paid or organic?
And absolutely, I totally want to hear how you describe that, because I sense battles for budget when we're trying to do kind of the same thing in different ways, and getting to make sure that they complement each other more, and as you suggested, aligning. So it also impacts budget, not just execution, but cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'll take a note to think about how to craft that specifically for budgeting for next week. I think that's a good topic. Right on. Cool. Thank you. I believe that's the last question. If not, I'm going to shut it down. We've had a really a long day. We're getting back into it. I am pumped to be back. We got 2022. I know this is going to be a breakout year for some of the people that are on here. Omar's going to get his company going. Todd's going to become a TikTok star because his shit is so funny. And so people are really going to have a lot of success this year. I know it's going to work out really well, and I'm looking forward to taking this ride with all of you a little bit further. And so with all of that, I'm really looking forward to this year. I hope that you show up to the event on Thursday, or if it's not in a good time, we'll catch it on the podcast on Friday. But there should be some really good actionable stuff about what are the people. It's funny. People ask me a lot, like, what is happening in the future? And I only do it once a year of like thinking about, like what are some things that are out there? And honestly, even when I say those things, it's typically things that are already happening, but that most people don't see yet. Like the community thing, for instance, that'll definitely be on my predictions on Friday. And the community thing is blind, obvious, right in front of your face for every single person that does marketing. But most people think that it's a prediction or new, but it's really been something that's been emerging for the past several years. It's been longer than several years, but been very obvious the past several years. So anyway, don't want to give away all the ideas, or don't want to kind of like let the cat out of the bag, or whatever the analogy is, but looking forward to having you there on Thursday. And let's kick off 2022 strong. Let's go do it.
Great to see everyone. Happy
Thanks,
New Year.
everyone.
See you next